All right, I'm here with Dave Nielson, Mr. CloudCam. Dave, how are you today?
I'm very good, thanks.
So for people who aren't familiar with CloudCam, what is CloudCam? Can you tell us a little bit about it and the history, what it is and where it came from?
Yeah, sure. So CloudCamp is an unconference, and for those who aren't familiar with unconferences, it means that the attendees who come to the event actually define what topics and breakout topics that we have for discussion. And so there are very few, if any, predetermined speakers, and therefore the attendees actually drive the agenda.
And now, but you do have, at least the one I went to in Austin, you had, I think, a handful of sponsors who were able to get up and do a 5-minute lightning talk each, right?
Right, and there can be sponsors who get lightning talks. You know, we want to give the sponsors something so they feel that their money is going towards some value for them. So we give them 5 minutes, but it's just 5 minutes, so it's not a lot of time. And then also, if somebody has something interesting to share that we feel is compelling and interesting for the audience, and they're willing to do it in about a 5-minute spot, we'll put them up there as well. For example, tonight, Randy Bias, who's a well-known cloud architect, consultant guy, is going to give a 5-minute sort of state of the cloud lightning talk, and that's not a sponsored one. That's one that we invited him to do.
Cool. So what was the genesis for Cloud, and when was the first one? The CloudCamp, I should say.
It's kind of a funny story. I've been putting on lots of unconferences for other folks for many years, and had helped people, with their raise money or provided consulting services, whatever, to help other people put on unconferences. I was at the second Foo Camp, and that was the one I was at was the one that spawned Bar Camp.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'd been familiar with the whole unconference bit, and so I finally thought, since I've been in the web services space and now cloud computing is interesting, why don't I put on a cloud camp and register the domain name cloudcamp.org, right? I noticed that cloudcamp.com was taken, but didn't really pay much attention to who it was. And then there was this email that went out to the cloud computing Google group from a guy named Reuben Cohen saying, hey, I'm coming to San Francisco. There's these 2 conferences. I was thinking about putting on a cloud camp that, in between. Anybody want to help out? And I emailed right away. I said, yeah, I've got cloudcamp.org. I've been hoping to do something similar. And he's like, oh, I've got cloudcamp.com. I was like, wow, this is just, what a coincidence. Clearly, we should do something together. And some other folks got involved, Sam Charrington, Jesse Silver, Sarah Dornsife, and the 5 of us put on the first cloud camp.
Excellent. And it was right here in the Bay Area.
It was in San Francisco, in June of 2008. And that one was extremely popular for a variety of reasons. One, we promoted it well, but number 2 is between 2 other really interesting conferences, O'Reilly's Velocity Conference and Structure 08, which is GigaOM. And so we had this great sort of center of gravity of really interesting people at that first event. We turned it into an unconference, which is really great for that type of crowd, because you're basically saying, hey, you guys are interesting. No matter what you guys propose as topic, it's going to be interesting. So we specifically gave them the stage, basically, and said, you determine what the different topics you want to talk about are, and I'm sure it'll be interesting. And it was. It was fantastic. So after that event, a lot of other people said, hey, we want to do something like that. Will you help us out? And some folks, Alexis Richardson, Chris Purrington, and some others from London had helped kind of with the ideation around the first cloud camp. They were the first ones to kind of take it somewhere else. So they did a cloud camp in London, and that went really well. Then I did one somebody in Chicago wanted to do one, so I went there, and then it just started going. And now here we are, 16 months later, we've done over 50 cloud camps.
Wow. How many of those in the U.S. and how many outside, approximately?
No, exactly. Maybe about 50-50, actually. Probably like 25 in the U.S., like 15 in Europe, and then 10 in other places in the world. Like we've gone to Singapore, Bangalore, India, Sydney, Australia, Auckland, New Zealand. We're going to do one in Tokyo this month. Of course, Canada. We're doing one in Tel Aviv.
Wow.
So it's pretty much going everywhere.
That's very cool.
And all over Europe.
So how do you do it with the, I'm sure you get a whole bunch of different levels of understanding of the cloud in your
Yeah.
conferences. So, and particularly now, say 16 months later as opposed to the first one. So you've got some people there who still really want to understand, well, what the heck is the cloud? Tell me
Yeah.
what it is. And there's others who are saying, if I see another Cloud 101, what is the cloud? I'm going to scream.
Right. So, yeah, we've really had to mix it up, and we've had to change it over time because the audience has changed. But we also get a different audience for every city. Some cities are more up to date about cloud computing. Other cities are just kind of learning. So that's kind of nice from a unconference perspective. It gives you that flexibility because you're basically saying, you tell us what you want to talk about. However, quite frankly, some cities aren't ready for unconference, or some people hear about cloud computing or cloud camp and they know it's about cloud computing and they show up and they have no idea that there's going to be an unconference. So when you look at them and say, okay, everyone, we're all here, and now you tell us what, you propose a session, they look at you like, well, that's not what I came here for, right? I came here to learn about cloud computing. So we've adjusted, I've added some additional formats. I've added something called an unpanel, which I created, which is a way of creating a discussion with the group before we do the breakouts. That way we're getting some answers right away and not having to wait until you break out into the unconference sessions. And that's helped. The lightning talks help, frankly, because it gives people sort of a comfortable setting to get started with. They just sit there, they just listen for maybe 20 minutes to a few lightning talks. And that's a nice way to kind of warm them up. Then we do the unpanel where we have a group discussion. And then we let people propose topics for breakouts. And then that's where, if you have something obscure you want to talk about, you can propose a session. Or if you have something, if you want to do an intro to cloud computing, I will always do that. And so we can handle the wide variety of topics that people want to discuss.
So then going forward, what do you see happening? Other planets maybe in the solar system?
For cloud camp?
Yeah.
I'd certainly like to continue growing it, but I think right now, we've probably been in something like 40 cities, and I'd like to continue expanding, but I'd like to make sure that those cities we've been to are continuing to have a discussion, so maybe help them get user groups going, or because you don't need to do a cloud camp every 6 months in every city. Some of them will get tired of that. So the idea is let's help them continue the discussion in whatever way makes sense. Another thing we're doing is we're starting to do some cloud camps in the cloud. So we're sort of a unconference using a webinar format. And we did our first one like 3 weeks ago, and that was a lot of fun. It was a little rough around the edges because it was the first time we were doing it, but it actually worked. The format that I created for Cloud Camp actually works as a sort of unwebinar,
Oh, very cool.
And I was a little surprised that turned out, but it did. We still have a few adjustments to make because you can't do it exactly the same as you would in person, but the unpanel worked. That was really cool.
Excellent. Well, Dave Nielson, thank you so much. And I guess people should look, what's the URL they should go to?
Cloudcamp.com, cloudcamp.org, both of them.
And they can see when it's coming to a city near them.
That's right.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
You bet.